Recently, we had the chance to talk with Seattle futurist and author Glen Hiemstra. Glen is the creator of Futurist.com, a company and web resource to help provide information on future trends and innovations that are shaping our world, our nation, and communities. Let's hear what he had to say about ARC's 50 Forward initiative. Glen, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take a look at the trends with me, the trends that are shaping the growth of metro regions such as Atlanta.
Well, growth is the #1 trend in this region, and the question is, how is that managed and what happens to it in the future? And there are several different forces which are going to push in different directions. One is climate change or global warming, which is quite clearly happening now and is going to lead to more variable weather so far as we can tell, and it looks like that's going to come sooner and harder than scientists used to think. And so that the drought that Atlanta experiences right now may not be a once-in-a-generation or a once-in-a-lifetime event. It may be something that comes from time to time, and that requires us to think much smarter about how we do development. That's #1. #2 is increasing energy prices, namely the end of cheap oil, and we all see what's happening to the price of oil right now, which then raises challenges for a region that is so heavily dependent on automobile-based development. So we have to think differently about how we build our community, not just about transportation systems, but literally about how we think about housing and work and recreation and how all of that fits together. And then there's a third force, which is hitting the whole country. It hits Atlanta as well, and that's the aging of the population. So that if you go out 20 years, you've doubled your aged population. You go out beyond that, and then you get into an even older population. People want to stay here rather than move somewhere else as they age. And then that raises questions about, especially about housing and how to provide housing choices that are affordable to people who are over 65 and have limited income. And then it also raises questions around transportation, because a heavily spread out automobile dependent transportation system doesn't work so well for a population in which at least 20%, eventually a quarter of the population, are really not needing to drive all that much and would like to live in a more compact community form.
Be specific when you envision an appropriate public transit system for seniors. What does it entail?
It involves, in my mind, 3 things. One is, if I could wave a magic wand over this region or just about any region, but this one in particular, so that's 50 years from now, and so there's some lead time to get there, there is a lot more, and transportation people debate this, a lot more train-based transportation because it's so energy efficient. And it also has an aura of kind of safety and modernness about it that people like. So I would extend the web of train-based transportation that you already have here. The second thing is obviously bus transportation and the kinds of accommodations for people who are less physically able, I think would be important there. And then the third is much more individualized mass transportation. So if you jump 25 years ahead and you assume the advances in information technology that are quite clearly going to happen, then it's possible to start thinking about a train-based system, a bus-based system which can carry lots of people and are very energy efficient, and then probably electric self-driving vehicles, literally that circulate the streets and provide individualized transportation. That's a little bit science fiction-y, and it's a little bit off the, let's call it outside the box of how we usually think about it. But one of the advantages, by the way, of this 50 Forward program, the reason I love it, is that when you think more than 10 years ahead, you're allowed to think differently.
If you ask, have to think differently.
Because you have to, because you assume that things are not only going to be different, they can be different, and they can be radically different. If you only think 5 or 10 years ahead, a typical planning horizon, you're so stuck with what you have that you can only make incremental changes in your vision.
As a futurist, picture a mid-century metropolitan area, Atlanta. What are we doing well, and what might we be missing?
Well, if you're talking ideally, what you would have done well is starting about now, development would have turned, everybody doing development would have turned at the borders around and started to look inward instead of outward. We move outward because it's cheap and convenient and we can sell cheaper housing. That is, we can sell nice housing at a cheaper price and so on. But there's going to be a great need for, because of the energy situation, the climate change situation, the elder population situation, for rethinking design and going from the outside in, it really is what it's all about. A young person told me the other day that I think I've bought my last gasoline car because by the time I'm ready to buy my next one in 8 or 10 years, I'll be afraid to buy one because I don't think I'll ever be able to resell it. Nobody will want to buy it after that. I thought that's a very interesting point.
It's true. And I recently purchased a hybrid within the last year, and I love it. I love it, and I feel much better driving it.
Yeah.
Let's look at what you know about Atlanta, because I know you've studied the city. Based on your knowledge, what do you think we should be doing if we want to position ourselves as a leader in the United States?
Well, the development pattern that I suggested, I would set out to become a leader in that. I would look at your university system and your higher education system and keep trying to do everything you can to knit them together and to leverage their technology expertise, like the Georgia State, or is it Georgia Tech, Georgia Tech Nanotech Center, because that's going to be
excellent.
Yeah, it's big, it's growing, it is. I argue probably the most significant of all the technological revolutions because it has the potential to touch so many different things. And one of those that it will touch is solar energy. And there are companies that are working on nanotechnology solar cells, which just means arranging molecules into solar cells by printing them off of printers like inkjet printers. It's an amazing, cheap, easy way to do it. And given the amount of sunshine that you get here 50 years from now, I would set out to be a leader in solar energy technology. It's not on the radar here locally yet, but it ought to be. I would do that. I would keep leveraging the diversity. One of the things that we saw in the breakfast program for the Atlanta Regional Commission that I was at this morning was the degree to which you're a leader basically in attracting Latino immigrants and Asian immigrants and so on. And so you're getting an ever richer ethnic mix in this region, which leads to, if managed well, it leads to lots more creativity, lots more sort of mixing of ideas and perspectives and so on. Particularly with the recent immigrant population, you get different ways of looking at things. And you're ahead of the curve and should stay ahead of the curve in trying to keep all of that together. So that seems to me to be very important. And then regional governance is an issue here because just like everywhere else, you have this great hodgepodge of communities and agencies and boards and districts and so on, and working hard to keep everybody working towards similar, not necessarily identical, but in a similar kind of direction so that we keep all herding ourselves to try to go somewhere together rather than fighting against each other.
What about our ability to be a leader when it comes to going green, if you will?
Well, you ought to try to be a leader in that, and there are actually lots of good local examples of companies and of communities that are making efforts to go green. And there's a little misunderstanding about go green that I picked up in some conversations that I had while I was here, and it is this: we think of going green as preserving green space. So doing something which keeps more trees and keeps more grass and so on. And that can be part of it, but it's much more about looking at the old downtown, looking at the abandoned industrial district, and figuring out how to do development there that is green in the sense of being very energy efficient, being very efficient in terms of use of water, being a very attractive place to live and work and have recreation, and so on. That's what going green is all about. And there, I think, if you begin thinking in those terms, it's a great design challenge, it's a great architectural challenge, and given the tendency of this area to look at a problem and to say, okay, we can do that, this is one you ought to do.
All right. With that, I say thank you very much. Glen Hiemstra, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.